And we are live with week 13 of the college football look ahead. I'm your host, Will, at Overdue Sports. To my right, as always, Jake. We've been on a hiatus for the last couple of weeks, but we are so back and ready to break down a lot of college football this week. And conference championships coming up soon. We got bowl games coming up soon. Lots of playoff talk, and we're gonna break down some playoff talk in a little bit here because there's a very important game this weekend that needs to be discussed. So we're gonna dive all over it this week. We can jump right in. Let's start with tonight, 9 p.m. We got number 23 in the country, UNLV, heading to San Jose State, where the Runnin' Rebels are laying 7.5. This line was really funky to me. San Jose State looked really good against Boise for a half last week. UNLV played really well with Boise at their place just a couple of weeks ago. This line looks a little bit short to me, but I still think I'm going to lay the points with UNLV. San Jose State has not really been impressive this year. They haven't impressed me at all, really, in any given game. I mean, you can look at the Oregon State game, but I think Oregon State stinks this year. So I don't have a whole lot to say on SJSU. I like UNLV with the points.
I mean, I think your logic's pretty sound there. I wouldn't argue with any of that. Just for me, it kind of goes back to last week, right? Like everybody kind of saw San Jose State plus, what was it, 14.5, and they didn't even cover that spread, despite being up, 3 touchdowns at one point. So I think that's kind of a good reason to back them, like if you're kind of into those nasty kind of trends like I am. But this line does look short, so that would kind of be the only reason why I would gravitate towards that. I like the under. I played the under. Not sure if it's going to hit or not. Not very confident in it. Like any college football that hasn't been on a Saturday, like the last month and a half, I've been really struggling in. This week is finally like a week where I'm like up units going into a Saturday. Like it's been a bloodbath the last, 4 weeks. During like just Tuesday through Thursday. Like Fridays are usually okay because they're more Power 5 games. But yeah, I gun in my head, I would go with San Jose State here just because that nasty, yucky taste they left in everyone's mouth last week. But the confidence is like a 2 out of 10 there.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I mean, I really thought they were going to get Boise last week. They had them against the ropes for most of that game and somehow didn't even cover. Couldn't tell you
that's what I mean. It's like they were getting 2 touchdowns. They were up 3 touchdowns, and you're probably thinking pretty unlikely they don't cover, and they didn't at home too. So you just see that number 24 in front of UNLV, and that looks pretty easy to me. So
I agree with that. Yeah,
might be a good place to get a little nasty.
Next up, heading to the SEC, we got Ole Miss coming off a huge win against Georgia, a convincing one at that. They are heading to the Swamp to take on Florida, who's coming off of a win against LSU at home. This line opened at 10, I believe. I caught it at 10 on Wednesday. It is now at 12. I'm going to take Ole Miss. I'm going to take Florida at 12 here. I'll take the points here. I don't feel great about it, though. Florida has been so disappointing in every home spot that I've liked them in this year. I have no reason to back them again, but the more this line climbs and the more points you get out of it, I mean, this thing might close at 13. I'd be willing to take a stab at it. If this gets to 2 touchdowns, I would 100% bet Florida in that spot. A little bit of a letdown for Ole Miss heading on the road to a hostile environment. I know Florida had a big win last week against a rival in LSU, so there's kind of a mix on both ends, but I like Florida here, a lot less pressure.
Well, I think Ole Miss beat Georgia 2 weeks ago. I think Georgia beat Tennessee last week. So I don't know if Ole Miss played. If they did, it might have been a cupcake.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. No, they played.
They beat the
shit out. No, I thought they beat
Arkansas last week. They played Georgia 2 weeks ago. That was 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Yeah, I think the one thing you said there is Florida won last week, and
yeah,
I think that's enough to not make me do that. I'm not doing Florida. They suck.
No, I can't anymore. Yeah, I did it like the first 3 weeks of the season, and I just can't.
Yeah, I'm a very on the record Florida guy. Like they're always in those kind of yucky, trappy spots, and they seem to play well at the Swamp, and unless it's this season. So, yeah, I agree. It's a Florida line, kind of. I mean, Ole Miss looks pretty pretty
Pretty freaking
easy,
good.
and they're good. Yeah, so I'm not going to say it's short or anything. It's kind of a big number for a tough place to play, but this is probably one that I wouldn't care to wager. But I think
No.
I like that. I always like
Yeah,
Florida.
I'll
Doesn't
take the
matter who
points
they
there.
play.
Yeah. Next up, the game of the week. Don't let the spread fool you. We got Indiana heading to Ohio State. The Buckeyes are laying 10.5 at home. Number 5, Indiana. Number 2, Ohio State. Indiana remains undefeated. There's a lot on the line in this game. A lot of playoff implications because a lot of people out there believe that if Indiana does not win this game, that they are not in the playoff because of their quote unquote strength of schedule. We both have issues with that. We have a lot of issue with that.
Well, I have an issue with that whole argument being placed on Indiana. I don't have a problem with the argument in and of itself, but go ahead. You can finish before we get into that.
I'm gonna take Indiana in the points here. This is something that I'm planning on betting at 10.5. I think it's probably gonna climb up even another half point. You probably catch this at 11 tomorrow morning. I'm gonna bet Indiana here. I like the spot. I think this game is going to be a lot better than people make it out to be. I think a lot of people are discounting Indiana's undefeated record. They've been convincing in every single win. I think they're talented enough to hang around in this game. Ohio State might pull away late. It might be like a 10-point game all night or all day. I still like Indiana in the points here. I don't think they went outright, but give me the Hoosiers.
Yeah, this is going to be a split game for me. And we're talking about the Army Notre Dame game in a few games. It's the same thing there. I think this is like a perfect fade the public spot. It does seem like a really big number for a really good, like two good teams. Like regardless of strength of schedule or not, Indiana's still a good football team. They show that by beating the piss out of everybody they play. So I'm just going to go against the grain here. Like if Indiana comes out super public, I'm probably going to lay them with Ohio State. If people are kind of vibing towards, oh, this team's not actually any good, I'm probably going to be on Indiana. So I'll have an idea, tomorrow morning. This game's at 11, right?
11. Yep, it's an early one.
But you alluded to it, right? It's like, strength of schedule. They don't control the schedule. Like if you were to take who's Indiana played last year and think of it in context or in terms of last year's teams, like their schedule would be pretty good, right? Maybe not Nebraska or Michigan State, but they were slated to play and did play the defending national champion and the national runner-up from a year ago. They both had down years. That's not Indiana's fault, I don't think it's fair to knock them. And then let's get this out of the way too. The SEC is still the top heaviest conference in college football, in terms of being good. But you get rid of 5 teams, that conference sucks. Like not like, oh, they suck and like, oh, they have 3 losses, they suck. Like half of that conference is shit. Kentucky, shit. Mississippi State sucks. Mizzou, they don't suck, but they do suck. You know what I mean? It's like, who the fuck are they beat? South Carolina, they're ranked. They have like 4 losses. What the hell is that about?
I actually think South Carolina's good out of that bunch. But the people who go on and they say that Kentucky would dog walk Indiana or any SEC team would dog walk. No, they would not.
They lost to Auburn.
It's such a bad take.
Auburn's the worst team in the conference aside from Mississippi State. Yes. They're horrible. Florida sucks. Tennessee is limited. Like Tennessee, they'll beat the crap out of, Chattanooga, but they'll score 3 points against Florida in 3 quarters. You know what I mean? Like the SEC bias needs to we need to open our eyes and be like, okay, it's not 2014 anymore. They don't play gauntlet schedules anymore. Yeah, are they tough places to play? Like every scenario? Yeah. But the teams aren't good anymore. Like as good top to bottom as they are anymore. You can say the same thing about the Big Ten. The top of the Big Ten is really good. The bottom of it is really bad. And you still have the same scenario, right? Like Purdue is so bad, but typically, like going to West Lafayette, they might give you a game in years past. That's not the case anymore because they're so bad. But like, look at Northwestern. Northwestern's a classic. Oh, it's raining in Evanston on a Saturday afternoon. How the
I was
hell are
just
we
about
going
to
to
bring them
win?
up.
It's like so hard to play there, and like for no reason. Northwestern's always bad, but like look at even Texas. Who like that's not entirely fair. Like Texas hasn't beat anybody. Oh, but they play an XCC schedule. Well, most of the teams they play are absolute crap. Like, what is the one quality win they have on their schedule? They don't have one.
They don't have one.
They don't have one.
Unless you really want to count Vanderbilt, because technically Vanderbilt
Well,
was ranked the
no,
week they
they're
played them.
improved.
No,
They're better, but they suck still. Like
yes,
they're like the suck category.
but it's
I would
but
throw.
it's very similar argument with them. Like, they don't control who they schedule, but when they scheduled at the beginning of the year, like that Michigan game was supposed to be a really big game.
Yeah,
That
same with the Washington game. Like
and the Washington game.
Yeah, and like
Texas
I'm
A&M will be their one good game this year, and it's the last week of the season.
Yeah, I'm okay with people making that argument. You just can't pick and choose who you apply it to. It's got to be the same across the board. Texas is number 3 in the country, and they haven't beat anybody. They beat the crap out of Michigan, and that was like the eyeball test. It's like, oh wow, maybe Texas is really good, but every week that went by, that Michigan win looks more watered down every week because Michigan stinks.
And they got smacked by Georgia too in the one
at
big
home,
game they played so far.
At home,
yeah,
exactly my point. And they're the number 3 team in the country. They shouldn't be the number 3 team in the country. Oh, are they still number 3? I think they. Oh, maybe not anymore. Maybe I was.
No, I don't think anymore.
They're like 5. They're still a top 10 team. They shouldn't be, in my opinion.
They are number 3. You're right. They're 9-1.
Yeah, I was going to say. I just looked at it. They shouldn't be 3. You know what I mean? We put this unfair, I shouldn't say unfair, it is totally fair, but we paint this picture over Penn State and James Franklin. Oh, he can't win the big one, and it costs him every year. He might get into the playoff this year, but every year he loses to Ohio State, and that's it. Like, that's the end of their season. They can't go on any further because we always have to pick 2 teams from the SEC. At the time, it was fair, but I don't think it's fair anymore.
No,
Top to bottom, that conference is not what it used to be. Like, the actual good teams in the conference are beating the crap out of each other. Ole Miss, Tennessee, who I would put like 1B. To me, it's Georgia and Ole Miss and Alabama. Those 3. And then everyone else who is ranked, unranked, whatever, they're like 1B to 2A, right? I would put Tennessee at like 1B. I would put Texas A&M at 1B. But LSU, South Carolina, Mizzou, any of those teams that spent a little bit of time in ranked, aside from Vanderbilt, because, okay, nice story.
They're much better than they were.
Yeah, but they're still bad.
We'll give them that, yes. They're much better than they were last year. They were horrible last year. They were ass last year.
They've been horrible for a long time.
Yeah.
And everyone overreacted because, they had 5 wins. They beat Kentucky and Auburn. Who cares? Those teams are horrible, like objectively bad teams. Auburn lost to Cal. Did they not?
I
think they did.
You're right.
They were 12-point home favorites, and they lost outright to Cal.
They lost to Cal by 7, yeah. They lost 21-14 at home in Auburn.
Just cut the shit. Like, it's not the same conference anymore. It hasn't been.
Not. And they lost to Oklahoma, too, and Oklahoma's not.
That's another addition. They're horrible. Coach left, and they're horrible. Like, bad. B-A-D, bad. I just don't like the bias anymore. Like, if it's warranted, sure. Like, okay. But
there's been years where it's fully warranted. This is not one of them.
Most years are. This is like, it's the first time, like, we're actually able to say it's like the best 3-4 teams in your conference are pulling the reputation for your whole conference. The Big Ten, it's been like that for 10 years now. Big 12, the whole narrative's been, you guys can't play defense. Texas and Oklahoma made them, well, maybe not the defense part for Oklahoma, but like they made that conference relevant. Now look at them. They're back to old Big 12. They'll score 80 points and allow 85. Pac-12's not there anymore, but like they wouldn't be very good either.
No, not this year.
Like minus BYU, Oregon. Arizona,
BYU wasn't.
Arizona.
BYU was not in the pack before that. They've been in the Big 12 for football. They transitioned in.
Well, 2 years ago, but
Yeah,
they never. But you know what I mean. You associate them in that area,
yeah.
right? But whatever. Big 12.
It would be Oregon. Yeah, this year
Yeah,
it'd be
it would be
Oregon.
only Oregon. Like
Yeah,
Washington.
Oregon. Yeah,
Washington State's okay too. They
yeah.
just haven't played anybody, but not really their fault. Who the hell are they going to play? USC sucks. Arizona sucks. Like Arizona
UCLA sucks. I actually thought Arizona was going to be good this year.
No, they were a great story from last year.
Yeah,
They're horrible.
yeah.
Complete dog shit. So it's like the point I'm trying to make is look at the ACC. Clemson, Miami. Miami lost to Georgia Tech. Clemson hasn't been the same team since like week 5. They lost to Louisville and they can't figure it out. Louisville just lost to Stanford. You know what I mean? Like the point I'm trying to make is like we apply all these arguments to all the other teams, except if you're from the SEC.
Yeah.
And yes, Ole Miss losing to, say they lost to Georgia, say they lost to Tennessee. That's okay. Like you're putting yourself in a position to lose good games. That should be rewarded. But what shouldn't be rewarded is you losing to Arkansas. It's not they didn't lose to Arkansas, but you get what I'm trying to say. You losing a team you should
or beating
lose to.
Auburn by 7.
You should be penalized for that. If we're gonna put that whole reasoning system onto every other team that is eligible for the playoff, they should also have that applied to them. Are they better? Are those 3 that we named multiple times in particular better? Yes, they're the best 3 teams in the country. Less Ohio State and Oregon.
Yeah.
But the logic should apply to them. You know what I mean? Notre Dame, they don't play in a conference. They're always scrutinized because of their schedule. Unfairly, they're always there in the mix, even though they like to lose crappy games all the time. But, they only... Like, Miami was number 1 in the country, or number 2. They fell 9 spots, as they should. They lost to Georgia Tech. Somebody else lost. They fell like 2. Does that make sense? It was a bad loss, too. So it's just like, for me, the whole point is like, Indiana, yes, you should apply that logic to Indiana, but you shouldn't do it in absence of applying it to everyone else. Not just everyone minus Georgia and Alabama or Ole Miss in this case, because Ole Miss has been very good since Lane Kiffin's been there and they've been knocking on the door, but they always lose that one game, which would exclude them. They should be included because every year they're like a top 5, top 10 team in the country, even though they're ranked like 16th because they lose to Georgia and Alabama. You know what I mean? Just apply it to everybody. If they win, well, that ends the argument. But if Indiana loses, that's going to be the whole narrative. Oh, they don't play anybody. The committee or the AP poll was wrong the entire season because they lost to what I would probably call a top 5 team in the country on the road.
You know what's crazy is that them in Texas are going to be identical at the end of the season, minus the A&M game for Texas. So if Indiana plays in the conference championship game again and plays somebody really good, because Texas won't be in the conference championship game, they're going to be identical. They're probably going to be 2 lost teams. The 2 losses are going to be that's what I mean.
Indiana won't play in the conference championship. If they lose,
it
would be Oregon and Ohio State.
Oh, Oregon, that's right. I forget that Oregon's in the Big Ten now.
Yeah. But like if Ohio State loses, that makes it really interesting because Indiana would be in. But does Indiana play Penn State? Because I believe it's So you're gonna have some weird tiebreaker rule to see who gets in. Indiana needs to play in the conference championship game.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, I think they're in a position to where they can't lose because you've got a lot of other teams that are resume friendly for 1 through 12.
Yeah,
but maybe not. If they lose, they play a close game, they might fall 3 or 4 spots, and then all of a sudden, season ends at 10. Could be the case, but I just don't think it's entirely fair that, like I said multiple times, that logic's being applied to all but one conference. When like it's time to be honest about it, that conference isn't the same anymore. Is the atmosphere the same? Is like the environment the same, right? Tough road game. You're going to Death Valley on a Saturday night. Of course, the crowd's juiced up. It's a very tough place to play, but like the teams aren't good top to bottom anymore. Like there was a reason why that whole logic was applied, because you playing, even if like Auburn wasn't very good that year, they had a live chance to win that game. They have a live chance to win every home game, but that's just not the case anymore. Florida's lost like 3 games at home.
They've been bad at home this year.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like let's keep it uniform here.
Love it. Moving to the next game, we've got number 16 Colorado heading on the road to this is actually at Arrowhead Stadium to take on the Kansas Jayhawks, where the Buffs are laying 2.5. Kansas is coming off of 2 straight weeks of ranked wins over BYU on the road and Iowa State at home. Colorado is coming off of a waxing of both Utah and Texas Tech in their last 2. Buffs are only laying 2.5. Give me the Buffs. I know it looks short. It looks easy. I think it is. I think Kansas is getting a ton of value this week because of what they've done the last 2 weeks. Give me the Buffs again. They're on a warpath right now. I think they're gonna smoke them. I don't think Kansas is all that good. I think it's reckoning day for the Jayhawks.
They're horrible.
Yeah.
That's another team where it's like the opposite. It's like they don't play anybody, but they're getting all the recognition. They're not 16 team in the country. Come on, they don't play defense. I know you're a fan, but like, come on.
They don't, but they score like crazy this year. Say what you will. The defense is not that good, but they run it up.
No, but I think a lot of their offensive success is because of who they play. Can't control that, but like if we're being objective about the team here, they're playing a Big 12 schedule where there's negative defense being played. Someone's got to be 16. That's what you're thinking, right?
Yeah, someone's got to score, right? Someone's got to win those games.
Mm-hmm.
But they won convincingly. That's at the end of the day. That's what I'm looking at. Like I understand that they allow points. The defense isn't great. Actually, the defensive front has been solid the last couple of weeks, so I'm happy about that.
Utah probably should have kept that game a lot closer than they did. What did Colorado end up winning by? Like 18?
24? No, 24.
Yeah, it wasn't a 24-point game. I watched the whole game. But they won. They were losing to Tech. They ended up winning by.
They looked really bad in the first quarter, and they looked great the rest of the way. Yeah, mm-hmm. They can be slow starters, that's for sure. And the fact that this game isn't in Lawrence, I think, is actually an advantage for them. The fact that it's in Arrowhead, and I know there's probably going to be a ton of people there because it's like a cool spot to watch a game. But I think Kansas is just hot right now, and the line is reflecting that because they looked really good against BYU and against Iowa State, especially defensively. And I think it's time. I think
no, I'm not disagreeing with you whatsoever. I was just parlaying our previous discussion with this one. Like someone's got to be ranked 16 in the country.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah,
Colorado.
Yeah, give me the Buffs. Back to the Big Ten here. What are you doing here?
Oh, Colorado. Yeah. I've faded them multiple times. I really liked them against Utah, and I was like, I don't want to say I was right, but it didn't work out. I was almost right, and it didn't work out. They were just like one possession away every time, but then they would like shoot themselves in the foot, like not just once with a BB gun, like 4 times with a shotgun, and then they have 1 foot, and then they would like hobble into the end zone, and then they would shoot off their other foot, and then they would wheelchair into the end zone, and then they died. So I was a little frustrated because like the entire game, it's like, okay, they're hanging around. Oh, they're down 3 touchdowns. Okay, we'll score a touchdown, get a 2-point conversion. It was turnovers last week for me personally, but as irritated as I am, I'm still Colorado just comes through every week. It doesn't matter if it's numbers 2 or 200. They find a way to win.
Yep. Heading to the Big Ten, we got the Wisconsin Badgers heading on the road to Lincoln, Nebraska, taking on the Cornhuskers. The Cornhuskers are laying 1, line opened at 2.5. It's moving back towards that 0 spot. Wisconsin has been confusing. They look fantastic against Penn State in Madison. They looked great last week against Oregon, had them on the ropes for 90% of that game in Madison. They've looked not great on the road of late. They got smacked by Iowa 2 weeks ago. I mean, they beat the crap out of Northwestern, but again, it's Northwestern. They don't even have a football field right now. I don't know. I feel like this is the week they got to do it one of these weeks, right? They finally got to find themselves in a win. Give me Wisconsin. Line move is kind of telling me that's probably the way it's going to keep going. If it flips 0, I might Benedict that, but give me the Badgers.
Yeah. They're consistently inconsistent.
And they don't have an offensive coordinator this week.
Yeah, they did fire their OC. That's what I was going to say.
Fire.
That guy sucked. Thank fucking God.
Yeah, he is awful.
I don't know where he came. North Carolina, that's where he came from.
Yep.
Drake May.
He did a good job with Drake May.
Yeah. I think Drake May did a good job with him.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy.
Let's reverse that.
Yeah, Phil Longo's a numpty. But yeah, I'm probably gonna bet the Badgers would be pissed when they lose to Nebraska. But
yep, I agree with that. And that's, talking about places that aren't necessarily easy to go, that's not an easy place to go normally.
Well,
it probably not as
over
much
the last
as
10 years, no, but in the 90s, oh god, yeah, when they were actually good.
Next up, we got a repeat spot of a academy playing Notre Dame. We got number 18 Army taking on number 6 Notre Dame. Notre Dame is laying 14 on the button, came down from 14.5. Last time in this exact spot, we both bet Notre Dame to smack Navy because Navy was like America's team at that point. Army is 9-0.
It's gonna be the same.
I think I'm doing it again. Give me Notre Dame.
It's gonna be the same thing. It's like the Indiana-Ohio State game. It's just like if you're gonna see all these Army tickets, just bet Notre Dame. And Notre Dame failed to cover last week in a travesty. They missed 2 field goals, so it's gonna be the same thing. Just see where those tickets are. See where those tickets are. Fade the tickets.
Finally, rounding out the slate, we got Vanderbilt heading to Death Valley to take on LSU, where the Tigers are laying 7.5. Vanderbilt is coming off of a loss against South Carolina at home. LSU obviously is coming off of that Florida loss like we talked about earlier. Give me LSU minus 7.5. Don't feel real good about it. If it comes under 7, I'd probably bet it, but I don't love that 7.5 number.
I think LSU is going to beat the piss out of Vanderbilt.
I could see that easily too.
They have to. If they want any chance of sneaking into the playoff, what are they ranked?
They're not ranked.
Oh, well, I thought they were still ranked.
No, 3 straight losses.
Lost
to Florida, lost to Bama, lost to A&M. 3 straight weeks.
That changes everything.
Yeah.
So your season's over.
Yeah. A little bit of pride, maybe. A little bit of pride here.
Yeah, but it's Brian Kelly. He doesn't have any pride.
That's true. I despise him. But
if Brian Kelly had pride, if he could instill pride in those guys, they'd actually be good, like they should be. Because every year they're a top 10 recruiting class because of him, and then he chokes and they choke.
But I think it's their last home game. I think they're at Oklahoma.
Yeah, fuck it. They're gonna beat the piss out of it. Yeah. Louisiana LSU alt spread.
Yeah, this is one of those. Just ladder it to 14 and see what happens.
Don't tempt
me. Well,
folks,
that's our show. We will be back for week 14 as we're gearing up for bowl season. We're still working on what we're going to do for bowl season, but we're gearing up for it. We got conference championships knocking on the door. We actually talked about conference championships pre-show, so we're going to dive into that as we get a little bit closer to that. We still got another week of regular season before they start, so we're going to dive in a little bit more. I think week 15 they start, so we're ready. I'm ready. Bowl season is upon us. I'm really excited for bowl season. The tail end of regular season in college football typically kicks my butt a little bit on the betting side, so I'm excited to jump into bowl season, and we will see you next week.